Russia will run out of money in the next 18 months, and that's the best case scenario. Vladimir Putin has been concealing Russia's economic disaster from the West. He's been manipulating currency rates, cherry-picking data, and hiding key economic statistics. The mainstream media has bought into Putin's words, but that's an asinine mistake. Behind the scenes, local officials are protesting at parliament meetings. Through my research over the past few weeks, I've uncovered the truth behind Russia's economy. At the end of this video, I'll reveal exactly when Russia's elites may revolt against Putin. Sooner or later, the entire world is going to wake up to Russia's terrifying crisis. Although Russia may appear to be in a strong situation militarily, the country's economy is imploding. Subtle but shocking leaks have shown that the entire Russian economy is about to fall apart. Because of Western sanctions, $600 billion of corporate activity has flowed out of Russia. This effectively disintegrates 30 years of foreign investment since the fall of the Soviet Union. To give you context as to how severe this is, Russia's GDP only sits at $1.4 trillion. 42% of Russia's GDP has flowed out of the country almost overnight. Over 1,000 companies have stopped doing business in Russia since the Ukraine invasion. Russia claims that 12 to 15% of direct employment has been lost from sanctions. Using Russia's numbers, the indirect unemployment is estimated to be roughly 35 to 40% of Russia's labor force. This is because one man's spending is another man's income. If 12 to 15% of people suddenly lose their jobs, then they will also stop spending on other products and services. This increases the unemployment rate to 35 to 40% by Russia's own numbers. A channel named Inside Russia frequently uncovers the secrets behind Russia's closed doors. As a citizen of Russia, he's noticed that plenty of businesses are dying off. Even the stores that are still open have little to no activity because of low consumer activity. The vast majority of stores have closed down, so there's simply nothing to purchase for consumers. When it comes to the products that still remain, prices have skyrocketed to new heights. Take a look at an IKEA building that used to have hundreds of people. Because IKEA stopped its operations in Russia, the entire area is now empty.
This particular place saw hundreds of people going in and out of IKEA right there, because that's the entrance, every single minute. Okay, this place was always like an anthill. Now it's absolutely empty.
No matter what Putin tells you, the situation is clear. Consumer spending has fallen by a drastic amount. Putin has been deceiving the West about the Russian economy by manipulating economic data. Positive analyses on Russia's economy have proliferated over the past few months. Most of them detail how Russia's economy has withstood the pain of sanctions. However, they all have one critical flaw. All of them rely on the Russian government themselves. Putin has been cherry-picking data and hiding crucial economic statistics from the public. Based on the past few centuries of ruthless dictators, we know it's completely nonsensical to trust propaganda from a country at war. Using direct data sources, data mining of shipping data, and cross-channel checks, Yale professor Jeffrey Sonnefeld has uncovered the truth about Russia's economy. According to Sonnefeld's research, it won't be long before everyone finds out about Russia's embarrassing situation.
Putin he has deleted the standard macroeconomic national income statistics, the inputs and outputs of energy, of imports and exports, the central bank's standing, the performance of major Russian firms, which has all been required to be reported on a monthly basis, transportation data like the airline flows, the passenger traffic, and of that nature, loan origination. It's all that stuff. It's astounding that has been deleted, and instead he's put up false metrics that people went for, such as, well, the ruble is doing well. The ruble is not an actively traded currency. It's not a traded currency whatsoever. In fact, you can't sell a ruble in Russia for dollars or anything. It's not a true number.
No matter what Putin says, Russian citizens know that the economy is doomed. In a democratic country, citizens would simply vote on a change in economic policy or protest about political mismanagement. The problem is that Russia does not allow free speech. After anti-war protests broke out following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, almost 13,000 protesters were arrested. The Russian government treated the protesters like they were animals. They engaged in physical misconduct that would get me demonetized if I went into detail. Many protesters received criminal cases and were placed in jail. One anti-war protester was clever and held up a sign during a live news broadcast.
Усилить сотрудничество в рамках союзного государства, а на совещании в правительстве обсуждали, как...
In response to this, the Russian government gave her 3 different fines that totaled to over $1,700. The government's actions against her have not stopped to this day. She was recently placed under house arrest and faces up to 10 years in prison under a new law. The law was enacted after Russia's invasion of Ukraine was announced. The goal of the law was to punish those who criticize the military by placing them in jail. Despite the obviously harsh consequences, Russian citizens are still continuing the protest. Given that I have the liberty of being in America, I'm on a mission to unravel the truth about Russia and China's situation. At 1 million subscribers, I'm going to release a video so groundbreaking that people might get arrested. I discovered some secrets of a powerful and manipulative individual that you wouldn't ever suspect to be a criminal. 92% of you are not subscribed yet, so please hit that subscribe button and let's get back into the video. One of the safer ways to protest against Russia is to simply leave the country. Because Russia's economy is doomed, as you'll later see in this video, high net worth individuals are leaving the country. An estimated 15,000 millionaires are leaving Russia in 2022, which is roughly 15% of the total millionaire population in Russia. China is next on the list with 10,000 millionaires leaving the country, but China has over 4 million millionaires, whereas Russia only has 100,000 millionaires. One of the reasons why millionaires are leaving Russia is because of the country's supply shortage. You might think that you're dealing with a similar supply chain problem from wherever you're watching, but I can almost guarantee you that it's nothing compared to Russia. Imports into Russia are down a staggering 60%, which is concerning for several reasons. Imports are typically seen as competition for local goods and services, so a drop in imports would be beneficial for local companies. However, imports into Russia have dropped so much that local companies don't even have the proper supplies to create their own products. Because of this, some products don't even exist at all. This is best exemplified by Russia's semiconductor shortage. Citizens can't even obtain basic necessities like refrigerators or cars because there aren't enough semiconductors. The US military found that Russia has been using semiconductors from dishwashers and refrigerators for military equipment. Russia has tried to mitigate this issue with unauthorized imports, but that hasn't worked out so far. Unauthorized imports are done through what's known as the gray market. The gray market, which is also known as parallel importing, is an unofficial channel where third parties directly import goods from country to country. This involves a third party purchasing products from one country and importing it into another country without consent from the manufacturer. Russia attempted to make up for its lack of imports through the gray market. Parallel imports into Russia are expected to hit $16 billion. However, this hasn't been enough to make up for Russia's import crisis. According to Yale professor Jeff Sonnefeld, total imports are down 60%, or $150 billion. This means that parallel imports have only made up for roughly 10% of the imports that Russia lost. While some argue that Russia can do business with China, China is actually making the situation even worse. Because Chinese companies are worried about secondary sanctions, Chinese exports to Russia are down substantially. Secondary sanctions are when a country cuts off all related ties to the sanctioned country. In the current situation, this would involve the US cutting off ties with Chinese companies that are doing business with Russia. Chinese companies are scared of being penalized by these secondary sanctions, which are severely hurting Russia's imports from China. The implication of Russia's import shortage is a severe inflationary crisis. According to Russia's central bank, the inflation rate of Russia's currency, the ruble, is currently at over 15% year over year. Russia's central bank has plenty of incentives to lie about the inflation rate. Jeffrey Sonnefeld did his own research on the inflation rate and found it to be in between 20 to 60% depending on the sector. Unlike the US Federal Reserve, Russia's central bank is actually cutting interest rates, which will only exacerbate inflationary concerns. Russia recently cut its interest rate by 150 basis points, or 1.5%. That is an unprecedented decrease, and is the 5th consecutive quarter of an interest rate reduction in Russia. It's safe to say that the Russian ruble is going to be worthless soon. But while the Russian currency crisis is awful, there's an even more pressing concern. Russia is losing money. Imports are important so that customers can purchase products, but exports are even more crucial so that Russia can sustain its spending on the Ukraine invasion. Because of Western sanctions on oil and gas, Russia has lost a significant portion of its customers for its energy products. 40% of Russia's GDP come from oil and gas sales, so this is obviously a huge concern for Russia's economy. Putin has touted the idea that he is selling oil and natural gas to China and India instead. That is a complete lie. First, let's start off with natural gas. Selling natural gas is incredibly difficult to scale because transporting natural gas requires pipelines. Pipelines can't just be built overnight. They take years to plan, set up, and build. Putin will argue that he can just sell liquefied natural gas, which can be transported by sea. This is once again entirely false. Less than 10% of Russia's natural gas is liquefied. This means that the other 90% of oil has to be transported through pipelines. Russia has a network of pipelines that are used to transport natural gas to Europe. Because Europe has cut off business with Russia, these pipelines can no longer be used. Russia also has a separate network of pipelines that link eastern Siberia to Asia. This Siberian network only has 10% of the capacity compared to Russia's European network. New pipelines that connect Russia to East Asia are currently in construction, but those are going to take years to be completed. Not only that, but Russia's weak economic situation means that the country may no longer be able to fund these new pipelines. Because Russia can't sell its natural gas, a significant portion of the country's income has disappeared. One of Russia's biggest natural gas firms, Gazprom, has cut its natural gas production by 36%, which reveals significant weakness in the natural gas market. Similar to natural gas, Russia is also suffering when it comes to oil. Oil typically takes 35 days to travel from Russia to East Asia. In comparison, it only takes 2 days for oil to travel from Russia to Europe. As a result of this, 53% of Russia's oil exports typically go to Europe, but as mentioned earlier, the vast majority of Europe has cut off trade ties with Russia. With Europe no longer being a customer of Russian oil, Putin has had to sell oil to India and China for a steep discount. According to the Russian government themselves, Russian oil is selling at a 30% discount compared to the global benchmark. This is a serious problem because Russia historically produces oil at a substantially higher cost than its competitors. While Russia's oil export revenues might appear to be increasing, it's all being sold at very low margins. Not only that, but India and China won't be able to keep buying mass amounts of Russian oil forever. According to Bloomberg's vessel tracking data, Russia's oil shipments to Asia are already down 20% from the peak of April in 2022. Russia has also historically relied heavily on Western technology for oil and gas production. This means that oil and gas production is likely costing much more than usual. This crisis is reflected in the Russian stock market, which is already down 50%. Sonnefeld believes that the Russian stock market would be down considerably more if foreigners could sell their shares.
And similarly, their stock market, which has only fallen by 50%, only by 50%, it can't fall more because they don't allow foreigners to sell their holdings. So the Russians have sold out, and those from outside the country are stuck with this uninvestable assets, just like the default on their loans. So yeah, the country's in bad shape.
While Russia's stock market is tumbling, Putin has an even bigger problem. Russia is running out of money. Because Russia's economy is imploding, nobody wants to lend money to Russia. Russia used to rely on China for capital, but China has stopped lending money to Russia. In the year of 2013, Chinese President Xi started a new project called the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI in short form. The Belt and Road Initiative is a plan to build the financial structure of China's surrounding countries. The bottom portion of the BRI is the road, and the upper portion is the belt. Russia represented a significant portion of the belt. Since 2013, BRI spending in Russia has accumulated to over $932 billion in construction and investment payments. After the West imposed sanctions on Russia, BRI spending on Russia fell to zero. That's right, zero. According to a professor at the Fanhai International School, China has been deterred by Western sanctions against Russia. This does not come as a surprise at all. Russia recently defaulted on a $100 million interest payment for foreign bonds. This marks the first time that Russia has defaulted since 1998. Russian government leaders have claimed that they sent the interest payment, but the evidence shows otherwise. The $100 million interest payment was supposed to be paid on May 27th. The Russian government claims that they sent the payment to Euroclear, which is a bank that distributes payments to investors. However, Euroclear has not received the money. In addition to this, Taiwanese holders of Russian bonds have also reported that they have not received their interest payments. With Russia's credit rating being downgraded to a default rating, Putin has relied solely on Russia's income and reserves to fund government spending. The issue with this is that Russia is spending more than it's earning. According to the Russian Ministry of Finance, Russia is currently running a budget deficit of 2%. This means that Russia is spending 2% more than it is earning. This budget deficit could be even larger, but for the sake of this video, let's just assume that Russia is telling the truth. So where is the funding for this 2% deficit coming from? This is where the rainy day fund comes into play. Rainy day funds, which are also known as budget stabilization funds, are emergency funds that are set aside for unanticipated deficits. Russia's rainy day fund contains gold and foreign currency reserves that was valued at $640 billion as of February 2022. Russia has since spent over $75 billion of the rainy day fund, which only leaves $565 billion left. Not only that, but a significant portion of the rainy day fund cannot even be used. $300 billion of Russia's rainy day fund was deposited in Western banks. The West has unsurprisingly froze all Russian bank deposits. So this only leaves $265 billion left in Russia's rainy day fund. Russia is currently spending $75 billion every 5 months, which means that Russia only has about 17.67 months left before the country runs out of money. This is in the best case scenario where spending remains constant. Because Russia's economy is imploding, spending will only have to increase. Russia's finance ministry recently reported that other Russian ministries are requesting 5 trillion rubles per year of increased spending. That is an $84 billion increase in spending per year, which translates to $7 billion of additional spending per month. With the increased spending levels, Russia only has 12 months left before the country runs out of money. Russia's rainy day fund is essentially a ticking time bomb that is going to explode soon. The global implications of Russia's collapse are going to be severe. Luckily for China, total Russian debt only sits at $472 billion, so a Russian default wouldn't hurt too much. But more importantly, Russia may have to give up on its mission into Ukraine if the country can't deal with the problems at home. This will not only save lives but also help the West recover from the economic pain felt by sanctions. With that being said, over 1,000 Western companies will realize that their Russian operations have essentially dissipated overnight. Vladimir Putin also remains a wild card, and some are concerned that he might try to escalate a global conflict through nuclear weapons. But before Putin can do this, a Russian revolt may occur. Former FBI Special Agent Clint Watt believes that there's a high chance a revolt will occur, either through a military coup or a popular uprising. Putin has done an incredible job at coup-proofing the government, but a coup could still occur. Despite the countermeasures that Putin has set in place, Ukrainian intelligence has suggested that Russian generals and KGB officials are planning to overthrow Putin. Such a coup would be done through the Silovarks, which is a group of military elites. Silovarks are believed to be the backbone of Putin's regime. Rumors are that they have the ability to use intelligence networks, state prosecutors, and armed forces. If a coup from the Silovarks were to happen, it would definitely be done before Russia runs out of money. Given that Russia has roughly 12 to 18 months worth of reserves, Putin could be overthrown within the next 4 to 12 months. So there you have it, Russia's economic disaster that will unfold over the next 1 to 2 years. Russia's unemployment is at 40%, citizens are leaving, consumer spending is at an all-time low, inflation is accelerating, imports are down 60%, exports have tumbled, the government is running out of money, and most shockingly, Russian elites are planning a coup against Putin. This video is just a part of a series that exposes the truth behind the global economy. If you would like to see more videos similar to this, please hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.